What are we talking about today?
Probably what we've been playing, unless anyone's got something specific on their mind.
Dude, I actually have a funny story about that.
Take us away.
I'd love to talk about what we're playing because
Hey everyone, this is Jetpack
Literally,
Swords,
so I
the
just got
casual
my
video game
PS5
podcast. I'm Greg, joined by me are Packy and
Nobody
Jay,
cares
and
about
saying,
this.
let's
Nobody
go.
Nobody
you've been in way
cares.
too many episodes
Yeah.
to not know what this is.
Maybe they're starting on the most recent one.
Oh my god, it's not a news podcast. If you've not picked up at this point yet, not sure if you need that introduction. This is not the news. It's certainly not a comedy podcast.
This
either.
isn't the news?
What do you mean it's not comedy?
I gotta
Look
get
at that.
outta
We just
here.
got like 2 laughs. Like, come on. All right, go ahead. Take us away, Packy.
Oh, 2 is so generous. So I just got my PS5 back. I loan out my PS5 because it is this box that I only put single player games on. So I loaned it out 4 times now to different people, and I just got it back after it's late. Well, I used to do it with my PS4.
Oh, okay. So you're
Sorry,
combining.
not just
I
my
was going to say,
PS5.
like, damn, I mean, the PS5 isn't, you haven't had it that long, right? Like,
No, they've all been in. I've rotated them very, very frequently. I think I've had them in other people's hands equally as much as they've been in mine.
which I'm one of those.
Again, because I just load them up.
I'm
with
one of those
single-player games.
lucky few 4 people who was graced with the loaning of a PS4.
And invariably will end up with it again because it's just going to be all the games that you played, the sequels to all of them loaded up on that console, just mailed to you. But anyway, so I got it back, and I've been whenever the big games are like the big immersive narrative games, and I've actually gotten really cold feet about jumping in because I know that once I do it, it's like all I'm going to want to do, and I want time to be able to just do that. So I got it like Sunday midday, and I was like, oh, I don't want to start now. Like it's not a good time, and like it's not also you're not always in the vibe for that kind of game. Like especially that's why I love roguelikes is I can just like listen to a podcast or watch videos or something on another monitor while just mindlessly playing the game. That is not what the Spider-Man, God of War, like all those different Horizon Zero Dawn games, they are not. You need to be very much focused and paying attention to like get the full thing out of it. Because they're big narrative games. And so anyway, I was dragging my feet on starting it. I wasn't even going to start it particularly soon. I was still playing WoW and all this stuff. And then I lose internet for over half of today. I was really worried I was not going to be able to do this podcast because I haven't had internet for like 6 or 7 hours. But I have power, so I couldn't work and I couldn't play most of the games. I couldn't like go what I would otherwise do and like go play WoW or even the other stupid roguelike game that I was playing because it had an online component and all my progress was saved online. So it was going to like restart me. And I was like, well, this is all I have. These are the games that I have downloaded. It's pretty much God of War or nothing. So I started and played a ton of God of War today.
Nice.
It was I got through what I would describe as the opening movie sequence, and the game is actually opened up into a real game now. I was really worried the story was going to be worse, and they have assuaged those fears very, very quickly.
That's good.
So I think what I heard most about the game, I just didn't hear that much about the story, thank God, because I didn't want it spoiled. I was really worried it was going to be very mediocre, and maybe it's meh later on, but I think it starts so strong. I'm like actually really, really interested to find out what happens, which is so rare for me.
Was that your take too, James?
Sorry, I got distracted. What are we talking about? I'm dealing with cat issues in the background.
Kitty cats.
I'm sorry. Are we talking about God of War?
The opening sequence of God of War,
Yeah, okay.
that
I
first
figured that's
4
what we're
hours.
talking about. It's
Did it really like hook you the same way it is now
yes.
hooked me?
It loads heavy like in the first couple hours with a lot of like emotion, like instantly, like a ton of emotion out of like not out of nowhere necessarily, but like it really like front loads the emotion. And yeah, I mean I've beaten it and I still have like the end game stuff to do, like that final like couple boss fights, but the actual like story stuff I've done, and I mean it's good the whole way through, but it definitely hooks you early on for sure.
I'm curious.
Yeah, which the first game did too.
But
so I didn't expect the second game to do that. I expected to like get off to the usual slow exposition heavy start.
It's a good sequel because I think it does a good job of it picks up the story, but it doesn't necessarily like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes when like sequels pick up the story, like they have to like kind of retread it just for the sake of retreading it. And I don't feel like God of War Ragnarok does that. I feel like it does a good job of getting you in and just continuing and like hooking you.
They do the smart thing that I've seen more and more modern games do now, where literally built into the menu options is a recap.
Yes, I
love
when
more
games
games
do
are
that.
doing that.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Yeah, Kingdom Hearts does that.
It's
Thank
even
Christ.
nice, not just for sequels, but like if you haven't played the game in like 6 months or something, you got busy with life and you come back. And
100%.
I love when games do that for like the actual story progression itself, or to be like, here's the story so far up to wherever your last save was, so you can get just the context again and then jump back in.
That's
always
like
super
bonus
nice.
points on top of just like recapping sequels, is recapping your current
Yeah,
save file.
exactly. The story so far. Yeah, absolutely.
Dude, big bonus on save files. I wasn't sure. There's stuff, Greg. I have it in my mind. I'm not sure how much of the opening sequence I want to share, because I know you will eventually play this game, but it's not going to be for probably a really long time. So I assume you'll not remember most of these details.
When's your lease up? Your lease is up in
light.
like 6 months. So like, I'll probably play it in like 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it's coming right your way. Right. Yeah. Day after I move to Boulder, guaranteed for sure. Lock it in. So
Wait, sorry. I had a question to ask though.
So there's a sequence. Okay, go ahead.
It sounds like this game really benefits from having played the first one, which is probably why they have the recap. Obviously, right?
Necessary.
Like,
yeah, you got to play the first one.
Yeah,
because that's always tricky, right, to manage when you're making a sequel. It's like, how accessible do I want this to be to people who haven't played the first one, and stuff like that. And so like, it sounds like they did a very good job with that, having the recap of the first game. But still, like you said, if anyone's on the fence about like, oh, should I play the first one or just jump right into the Ragnarok, I think the consensus is you should play the first one, right? Like,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's whether you're gameplay or narrative driven, right? Like they are equally both. So, and narratively, if you decide, hey, our sequel is going to be standalone, that usually is saying, okay, we accept that our story is not going to be very good, or like that our story is not going to build on the first one, which really undoes so much of what you gain from doing a sequel. So like the recap is the most they're going to compromise, and I appreciate that a lot. Like
I think
there's so much. Oh god.
I was just going to say, I think it's like not even, obviously this is like a good example of it, but I think overall it's such a challenge anytime you want to make like a franchise. And like especially where you're not planning ahead of time for it to be like a franchise, where you got to make the first game, you got to make it good, standalone, just in case you don't get the feedback and money to make an actual sequel or a franchise. But you also want to add enough possible leads into the next things, that way if you do have to make a franchise, like you can do something. So like me personally, I'm usually like, I love, obviously as an example, I love all the Mass Effect games, I love all the Dragon Age games, but I think the first of both of those series are the best, because like Mass Effect 1 is my favorite by far of the 4 games, like 100%.
Definitely in terms of narrative.
Like I like
and
the
world
story
building.
more.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I like the story more. I personally like the gameplay more. Like I really like Mass Effect 1. Just as also another aside to this, I don't like the Legendary Edition small changes they made to the first one, because it changes the gameplay to make it more like friendly for the sequels, so it feels more like the sequels, but it loses what Mass Effect 1, like some of the charm it had to me. But like obviously, like this, I think they did, like you said, they did a really good job having the recap and having it just be a straight continuation. And I don't know, I think they've done a really good job, like, because the first one definitely set up for sequels, but again, you never know. And they were part of an established franchise, but obviously this was like a reboot.
Yeah.
The 2018 one definitely was. So I don't know. I think it can be really challenging as a like creative person or as a developer to put in those leads to a sequel without actually knowing if you're going to get a sequel out of it, and like how to like make that transition smooth or not. So I don't know. I think they did a really good job. So
I think they did what you want to do. I thought it was cool, as opposed to a lot of, in doing that breadcrumb where you want to like tease at your sequel but not actually be certain that you're going to have it, so you kind of have to like put it there but not be too invested in it. In terms of like having your game be an entirely closed loop and be its own standalone thing. But most people put out that breadcrumb, and even when they get the sequel, sometimes it like is vaguely similar to the breadcrumb, right? Like they were started on the right path, but again, they weren't sure and they weren't committed to it.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
like they usually kind of just throw whatever happened in that scene, usually it's like one scene, in the trash. And God of War very much does not do that. They like bar for bar mirror exactly what that breadcrumb is. Like the exact scene that plays out that to introduce Thor is how the game starts. It is very, very cool.
They did
also
a really good job.
Yeah, especially with Thor. I really like
Oh, for
how
sure.
there was so much criticism when the initial art for Thor as a character came out.
That's only
and
because people are stupid, and I'm sorry, I won't say stupid. They're uneducated. They only know Thor from
Yeah, we
Marvel
only know Chris Hemsworth.
and not from because like mythology, quote unquote, accurate Thor is the God of War version of Thor. It's accurate to the original myths.
I think it's also that's the only way, which is really funny. It's how like super strong people are only perceived in like exactly one body image, and it's just different sizes of the reverse triangle.
Yeah.
Which I think where you have no body fat, and like
it's like such a Western thing too, because obviously like you think of like sumo in Japan, like those guys are fucking jacked and strong as hell.
Strongmen in general.
I mean, yeah, no, for sure, yeah.
Strongmen are not built like strongmen. That's where Thor's design comes from.
Yeah.
Like that is how those guys look.
Yeah. Absolutely, and also like he's a drunk. Like he's gonna have a kind of a drunk person, an alcoholic body.
You got the beer guy,
barrel chested, and
they nailed his presentation.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is,
he stays great.
If I just embrace my alcoholism, then like I can be cast in the next Marvel movie as Thor. Is what I'm hearing. Just I just need to work on the beer gut a little bit, and then I'm golden.
I don't know.
You can be cast in the as a villain in the next movie where they systematically murder people who are flawed. That's pretty much because I have no doubt early into this game, James, don't spoiler, but I've got a pretty strong feeling this Thor guy ends up dead because that's a little bit of our good friend Kratos' MO.
It is his MO for sure, historically.
That do be what he be doing. Yeah, I'm excited. Also, I think the image that came out of him didn't do him justice it's another one where they you make a character that's big but not too big, where he's bigger than the main characters and very, very imposing, but he's not a literal giant. So he's able to interact with them as a human, but clearly be intimidating. Yeah, he's very, very cool.
I'm
excited.
A minor in mythology, just for anybody curious why I specifically care about the myths.
I just didn't know that. That's cool.
Good old BA in psychology and a minor in folklore mythology. Really putting that to use.
I was going to say, those sound like two super employable degrees. Well, the first one actually kind of. The latter, not as much.
No, a BA in psychology means nothing.
I mean, most people have one of those in college. I think it's a pretty, I'm a software developer. I have a degree in economics. I think that mythology, though, gives you way better conversational trivia. Economics, not as nearly as much.
I love my Germanic mythology specifically, so...
at some point you're just gonna have to teach me about German. No, we're not getting sidetracked on this now. But I literally I don't even know anything about Germanic mythology at all.
Well, it's Odin, Thor, and all the current God of War stuff is all Germanic.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's heavily influenced by
commonly called Norse, but it's not Norse.
See, there you go. I knew it by the common people, in the common tongue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we don't get off topic on this, but Neil Gaiman is a fantastic author and one of my favorites. He did the Sandman graphic novels, which is fantastic American Gods and stuff. He did a rewrite or retelling, his translation or whatever of a bunch of the Norse myths and released it under his name, and it's really good. So
cool.
Highly recommend.
But so what have you been playing, James? We got Packy over here on God of War, and besides that, Packy, I'm assuming it's WoW, roguelikes, and DKO.
The usual.
Pretty much, yeah. It's WoW and DKO. So much WoW. I am rapidly approaching the endpoint with that game by my own design as always.
Yeah, you have the tendency to burn yourself out. Yeah. It's like you light yourself on fire, and then you're like,
you haven't been playing as much
recently.
Wait a second,
why am I on fire?
This time I didn't have a way to do it with one character to burn myself out, so I literally, because you haven't been on that much in the past week. I have a max level monk that is partially geared.
Jesus Christ. Oh God.
I just didn't know what to do. I was just like, well, this is the next class that I would want to play, and then I just played so much. Let's not talk about WoW. I played so much. I promise it's almost over, podcast listeners. We're so close to the end.
Probably. Especially because, I'm at like you've mentioned, I'm at that point where I'm getting on for raids. That's more or less. Actually, I get on for raids, and then 2 other days of the week, because the way they're doing the world quests is split into the first half of the week and the second half of the week. And so I get on to do some of those, and I get on for raids, and that's basically all I do these days in WoW. They've
designed the game that way, and I can't stress enough how weird it is that that is such a good play for a game whose business model charges you $15 a month. People were so ecstatic over these changes that like essentially are encouraging you to play less of this game that you pay for recurringly in a way that you don't for any other game.
Well, I think it's because
It's
it
just weird.
theoretically it
WoW
would
is such
help
a weird
with
game.
burnout on from obviously like you're saying you're
It
close
does.
to the
It's just crazy you'd still want to engage with that. I don't know.
Yeah, my time will definitely sink too because as I mentioned to you all, I for some dumbass fucking reason I literally I don't know why I bought the ESO collection when it was on sale for the New Year and Christmas for like $20 and so
Wait, what was the ESO collection?
all
again?
the expansions for ESO for like $20 including the latest one and because there's no subscription
Wait.
right so
Yeah.
I did not hear about this. Elder Scrolls Online.
the game that
Yes.
has dog
You
water
bought all the
combat.
expansions for
Yeah.
that game that we played together for
Yeah,
like
it
an
has
hour,
dog water
and
combat.
I was not. I'm usually the complainer. You were the
Got-
one who complained
got
the
dog
whole
water
time.
combat. It's terrible. It's so
What?
It's
unbelievably
It's just
bad.
$20 in the garbage. There's a 0.0%. I'm not playing it.
Yeah, that's the other thing is I'm like
I don't wanna play.
This will be more fun with people because some of the reviews were like solo contents.
Yeah, weird MMOs, massively
Yeah, I know, right?
online games.
Well, apparently, solo content in particular is really easy in that game, and group content.
It's
is
not
where
a
it gets
bad
fun.
solo game, speaking from experience, but I'm also a massive Elder Scrolls
just say,
fan.
that's-
It's like my favorite fantasy universe. And I haven't played a ton of that game, I'm going to be
I
honest.
basically got it. I was like, okay, so this is like 5 Skyrims for $20 is kind of my thought process. And I was like, okay.
Well,
I mean, maybe not
It's
5,
like
and they're lower
0.75
quality. They're
Skyrim.
lower quality Skyrims, but
There's no way. That's such a crazy
I
comparison.
get it though. I get the impulse of this is a lot of content for
Yeah.
a very cheap price. I might as well get it while it's cheap, and then I can always fall back on it if I need to. I get it.
so
it.
they already have so many things to fall back on. Like,
Sure,
Which-
but you never know.
You complain about the number of games
which,
you had to
you
play.
know, last
There's a name for this.
I'm sure there is. Hey, James, you got the psychology major.
When you
Tell
just-
us tell
when
us
you
the
buy
name for
deals
this.
because they're good deals,
Brought that
even though you
Skies of
wouldn't
Wonder when
otherwise
I was
buy
in
the thing.
school. I don't remember. I can tell you how to replace a trampoline.
That's interesting, actually.
I do that pretty regularly.
The other thing is obviously last week, you know, I mentioned I was giving Witcher 3 another shot. As I've told you all, I have already given up on that. Didn't.
Witcher 3 is a good game with the your story so far thing. It has like gates of
Oh,
progression,
that's cool.
and it'll do a animated cutscene to show you like what's going on. Just saying.
Interesting, yeah. They
I like
they
Witcher
didn't
3.
have a recap of 1 and 2 though, which would have been cool.
No, they kind of don't care because nobody else really
I was
cares.
gonna say like
so
it didn't feel like it was
the
hampering
remakes will
me.
be cool.
It didn't
'cause
feel
we're
like
getting a remake of the
Yeah.
first one, but the third one's the first one that's like. Speaking from experience, I've played a tiny bit of the first one and a decent chunk of the second one. The third one is the only one that's like a game that you can sit and play and have it not be annoying, in my opinion.
And
Like the second one has some really cool
Clearly,
story
I
stuff,
couldn't
but
even do
man,
that.
it is not a fun game to play.
I will say the 60 hertz for the current gen console update made it much better. But yeah, no, I just couldn't do it. Like I got to the end of a dungeon and I had no more food left and I had like a quarter health and I couldn't kill the boss and I was like, okay, I'm gonna uninstall this
Do you
game and
not
never
have
play it
potions?
again.
Do you not have
I
potions?
had a potion that gave me attack power, but not that healed me. And it's like,
Then you're already off to a bad
yeah.
start.
So
That's one of the first things you should do.
yeah, and that's kind of what it came down to. Is there's like, I was so underleveled also because I wasn't doing any side quests. So I was underleveled and I hadn't bothered. I bought food. I went to a tavern before I went inside and I bought food
Yeah.
specifically, right?
That's
By the time I got
smart.
to the end, I had still finished it and still wasn't at full health. And so just literally
Food in
couldn't
that
kill the
game
boss. And I was just like, okay, I don't
Food in
want
that
this to
game
be Dark
is-
Souls, so bye.
Is like a long-term out of combat heal more than an in combat heal for sure.
Yeah.
You really need you need the healing potion for sure.
No, absolutely. Like just didn't prepare and I didn't want to have to prepare. I
You'll-
didn't want to have to do side quests and the game just does not allow you to do that.
I'm sure at some point at some point it'll probably catch you and you'll come back. Because I think when it first came out,
this was already my second attempt, so I don't think I'm ever giving it a go
speaking from
again.
experience, it took me a couple attempts because White Orchard is kind of sucks, and then like the Velen like right after that kind of sucks, but you'll eventually come back to it.
I think it makes sense though that like, I mean, The Witcher is a game that you really have to like think through each encounter. So, it really encourages like big brain gamers to play and enjoy it. So that's usually who likes it. And usually like smaller brain, Halo, Call of Duty, like spammers, people who just like chug Mountain Dew and
people
this is coming from the guy who plays
so random.
I'm just saying, this is coming from the guy though who's like, I'm good at fighting games, but I'm just ADD and I just rush in there because my fucking pea brain is too tiny, and I'm just like, oh, gotta hit.
It's so true. I just think that one's funny because it's within one game genre. I think I'm pretty objectively good at the game, but then there's just long stretch, particularly when you and I are talking, where it's just like brains off, and then I just hold the stick forward towards him and just throw moves. Yeah. And like we lost so many games doing it, but and you can we've seen it too on both sides, where like you can tell when people are playing a game. It's one of those games you can play without paying attention, and then you beat somebody pretty badly, and then they see the final score, and then they all of a sudden like lock in and start really playing. You could do it in every game, but fighting games
when there's a
really,
best
really
of three as well, because that'll come down in the third one. You're like, oh wait, I got to actually turn the brain on for half a second and actually play this one.
Or even after we saw this the last time we played, we like kind of moderately beat a team, and we were like, they seemed better than this. Why didn't they beat us? And then like the next, because they were really high level. And we were like, I'm surprised they did so poorly. And then like the second game, they beat us pretty solidly. And then the third game, they like skunked us. Like it was just really, really bad. I was like, oh, okay. They just were not caring. And then they cared.
But yeah, so obviously set down Witcher 3. And then I've picked up Metro Exodus in place of that.
I need to play
which has some of its own, like you have to prepare for things, right? Like you have to, although that's not even true necessarily, because like the world's so much smaller, it's so much more linear that like you don't have to go out of your way to get materials to craft med kits and stuff like that, right? And like there's no levels, you don't have to do side quests to level up or any of that shit, right? And so like it's a nice, like it doesn't have any of the shit that I was hating about The Witcher, which is nice. And it's been good so far. My only complaint is they have some really fucked up lighting. And like I thought I was crazy, and I was like, there's no way that this is this bad. And like, but then I go online and it's like, oh yeah, no, the game's black levels are
like
just fucked up. Like it just doesn't work.
2033 and Last Light both like were gorgeous, like for their times, obviously, and like ran well and had good effects. And so I'm surprised Exodus is having issues. I haven't played it yet. I own it on the PlayStation.
Yeah, I can't tell if it was only an HDR thing or what. But it was the classic case of like they only had one slider for brightness. In most HDR games, you'll have two. You'll have like a peak brightness and then a normal one. And yeah, like it just seemed like if I had it bright enough that I could even kind of see indoors, right? Like even kind of see indoors with the flashlight, right? Because that's a big part of the aesthetic of that game. Is it is supposed to be dark, right? It's very much supposed to be dark, and you have the flashlight, and
spooky.
Like and so if I have it just bright enough though, where I still maintain that, but it can actually see indoors, then by the time like I go outdoors, then like stuff is kind of like washed out, and so it's just like it's kind of a bummer. And honestly, what I've been doing is I've literally just been adjusting it on the fly. Like, I get to a new area.
Frustrating.
I'm like, okay, let me just go tweak this thing. And it's like, it's less than ideal, but the game does look really good. And that, they do have that aesthetic. Like, it is so great, right? Yeah, no, like you literally spawn and like you can hear the fucking mutants, and like you got your flashlight and you're looking around, you're progressing through the tunnels or whatever. And then, you get outside, and the outside is this, like beautiful, like snowy Russia. Well, it's snowy destroyed Russia, right? But it's still like snowy Russia. And so it is a very nice looking game, aside from the like kind of hit or miss janky lighting. But yeah, that's what I've been playing. That, and obviously WoW and DKO. Maybe more DKO than WoW these days, to be honest, which is probably not surprising.
DKO is just fun.
It's so fun.
Like fighting games.
And
we're so easy to please.
I do like
It's just a
games,
different version. It's just a different flavor of multiverses.
Yeah, it's fair. Which I actually launched Multiverses the other day, and dude, they had a Christmas event, and like more importantly, they had a holiday rain dog skin, and I didn't play enough to get the holiday rain dog skin, and it's so sad. For those who don't know,
No.
Rain Dog is the only original character in Multiverses, and he's super fucking cute. He's adorable, and he's
Greg already
really
has
good.
3 skins for this
and
character.
he's really fucking good. He's a great character, and
Also
yeah,
very good.
he's got the best skins in the game by far, and he's a fun character to play. And so I'm sad that I don't have.
I did see something interesting with multiverses from like a development perspective, where people have recognized they had this like kind of very ideal launch, where the game came out and then they released a new character like once every
2 weeks,
2 to 3 weeks, like very, very consistently. And they showed images, like there was a lot of hype building up to the characters. And people realized that the Martian, the last character they released, was the last one where they like showed the images beforehand. And now they haven't announced who the new character is going to be, nor who the one after that's going to be, which is very different than last time. And also, data miners aren't finding anything,
Yeah,
so
was
it's
that just
really
holiday
like
break?
people already kind
Like,
of figured.
like I'm assuming that's just holiday break, though, right? Like,
Well, I also assume they like they had worked
That's
really
fair.
far ahead,
Also
and
true.
now we've
Yeah.
massively caught up. They're probably still more ahead than people are giving them credit for, but I bet they're like the next character is probably some way along done, and they're barely started on the one after that, much less the one after that. So they're not going to be able to release at the same rate, and so they're probably going to even out in terms of like the usual low player base that fighting games hit around this point in their life cycle.
Yeah, I wonder what the population is doing these days. But so what about you, James? What have you been? Or go ahead, Baggy, and then James. What have you been playing?
That's more interesting to talk about. I just was curious what your all's thoughts on how, like, whether that was a good strategy or not, or whether it was more worthwhile to just like release all those characters, wait a little bit longer, release all those characters at once, and just let it rip, as opposed to like.
I think it makes
I
sense.
feel like me.
Go ahead, James.
I was just gonna say, I feel like me personally, I like to have the consistent, maybe not drip feed, but like at least consistent releases. And I think too, like overall, I think there's a loud minority in like the gaming community that does not understand this, where people complain about day one DLC. It's just like as a general concept, where what really happened was they went gold on the initial original release, and then the developers were just sitting around while everything else got done after that, like the logistics side. And so, why wouldn't they just work on new things? And those things are obviously easier to release than the actual full game, and so it comes out, when the game actually releases. And it definitely is annoying when you can find that content on the disc or whatever ahead of time, and you're like, oh well, that's kind of shitty then if it was already on the disc. But I think for a fighting game especially, doing the consistent drip feed of new characters or stages or whatever, and this is from someone who's not a big fighting game person, but I like the Mortal Kombat games a lot, and Injustice, which is just Mortal Kombat DC.
Is so good.
I would love a new Injustice game. But I feel like having the consistent drip feed, one, I think is better for player retention, because people, even if they don't care about the game, they what's going to come next? What am I going to see next? They like having that angle of discovery.
Yeah.
That's why I feel like a lot of games, when you get to the end of the progression track for whatever the game is, whether that be skill points in an RPG, or Call of Duty obviously has the unlock track for weapons and stuff. I think, at least for me, I way lose interest a lot of the times once I'm done, unless the gameplay itself is solid.
And
or
these
if I
days
have
the
more
Battle Pass,
story
right?
content to do at least.
Because a lot of games
and I
have
think there
free,
definitely can be a challenge.
Battle Pass tiers even, right?
Yeah. I think there can definitely be a challenge where you want to line all those things up in the best way to keep player retention. I think what they did is smart, and it also makes it look like they actually had a plan for the release, which a lot of developers I feel like sometimes don't, where they're like, this character will come out in 3 months maybe, I don't know. And I think that shows. And I think you're right that they probably had a bunch of it done beforehand. They finally caught up, and then now it's going to be a slower feed of content, which I don't play Multiversus or anything, but there's a good amount of characters now, right? When I played, it was original release, and there was 9 characters or whatever. So,
Yeah, if you compare it to DKO, for
right.
example, it's double the cast size of DKO at this point.
Well, especially, I think it launched with something in the 9 to 10 range, and now they've worked their way up to 14 or 15.
Yeah,
so it's really
14, 15.
That was the trade-off. It probably
Yeah.
is. No, because they've released 6 characters, so I think if they started with 9, they'd be right at 15.
Oh.
I think that it was really that trade-off, right? Like they had their, you come out with a very small roster, and the trade-off is being able to like drip feed. I, for what it's worth, also think that the way that they
Also,
release characters was really smart.
yeah, and I bet it helps with balance too. To obviously have fewer characters, that way they
100%.
know they can do it internally better, and then the player base can understand it better. Which, like again, I don't know if I've ever said it before. Fighting games to me, as like a childhood thing, were always just me and my brothers getting into a match, no rules, no competitive like angle to it. It was just beat on each other and like have fun. And then when I got a little older and started playing Smash with like people in college or like Jacob and like his
Oh
friends
yeah,
from
when people
Transy
ruin games,
all play it like competitively.
Yeah.
Like, our
Oh, they're
William,
the
our friend
worst.
William, he plays it like pretty competitively, and there'd be like rules and like no items on the stage. I was like, this isn't fun.
Yeah.
I want to play where it's just chaos and you're playing as a dumb character against your brother who's a dumb character, and you can pick up a bat or throw a Pokeball at each other, or like, and that's same with like Mortal Kombat. Like I never play Mortal Kombat competitively, but like I have fun just wailing on somebody as like a cyber ninja, and the other person is like a demon or so. Like it's Mortal Kombat. Like I don't fucking know, but it's just fun for that angle specifically. And then
Greg,
whenever I play it competitively, it's just like, oh, this kind of sucks the fun out of this because like there's rules now, and I don't want there to be rules. So,
I think Smash is easily the worst about that. Like, and it's very specific. It is not the game; it is the players.
Oh, I
that do
hate.
that.
To me, the fun of Smash is literally the chaos that you can get up to with the 9,000 items and the 60 characters and the 40 stages. Like, that's so fun to me. And then when you play with people who are... It's totally valid to not want to play it that way, but, like, mixing those two styles together, for me, it is the least fun. Like, I don't know how to play Smash in a way that's, like, quote-unquote good. Like, no idea. I'm also not a min-max person in, like, any kind of game. So for fighting games where that's definitely, like, how to win is how to like min-max all your things. Like it's so counterintuitive to me.
James, did you ever
I think
play?
you're able to like play both ways.
Go
ahead.
I was gonna say, James, did you ever play Killer Instinct? I feel like you would like it because they had this system of like auto combos where it was like literally just mash the button and it'll do a combo for you.
That's how Marvel
awesome.
vs. Capcom is. Have you guys ever played Marvel vs. Capcom?
At some point,
that game
probably,
is literally you press 3 buttons and on the screen the character does like 7 combos, and it's like particle effects and lasers and like I love Marvel vs. Capcom because there's no rules and it's so funny. Like Jacob's really, really good at fighting games, our friend Jacob, but I destroyed him at Marvel vs. Capcom because it's literally like tailor made to people like me who like don't know what they're doing. It's great. I love it.
That was the only thing I know about Marvel vs. Capcom is that of any fighting game has the overwhelming reputation of being like all straight combos. Like one person gets a hit and then they just fucking kill you.
Yeah, it's nonsense. Like it's also like really pretty, and so like it's just a good combination of being nonsense buttons and like inputs and then just whatever's going on screen. I love it. It's great.
Greg and I, it was one of the games Greg and I played for that was probably the shortest one because that was the one where it was another game where you have to hold. I have a weird thing with like I really don't like games where you have to hold backwards to block. I want a dedicated block button.
Oh yeah,
don't like it.
Really,
that's definitely
really
like a arcade tradition that's carried over.
Yeah, and it's like the OG way to do it. And it's just because, and it stays around because that's what people are used to.
See, I get around that because I don't block in fighting games when I can just attack. Why would I block?
I only block on reaction, and it's just hitting the back arrow is not my reaction. Like it's just hit and again, it's just and I want the block button because I'm used to smash where I have a shield button.
Smashing buttons.
Yeah.
So.
But that was we played for like easily the shortest. I think I made it through 2 or 3 rounds, and Greg is just mashing the button and hitting me, and like I'm dying and I have no idea how to block.
Yeah,
and I
it's
just
great.
Instantly die, and I'm like, all right, cool.
Jacob got like he wasn't like tilted, but he was just like, "This is dumb. I don't want to play this anymore." I was like, "No, this is great.
Uninstalled
this
so
is fantastic." Because like he'll always be like, "Oh, let's play Mortal Kombat together," and then I'm trying to play it for fun, and his version of fun is again valid, but it's just grinding me into the dirt.
Yeah, it's
because he's
I'm so glad I get to do this on a person instead of a bot now.
Exactly.
I get to execute this combo that I practiced 15 times while you were doing something else.
So like, from what I understand, Tekken is probably like the most technical of the fighting games in terms of like, and like he's solidly good at Tekken, and like me, I do not know what's happening at all.
Dude, Tekken is hard.
Tekken's crazy.
Tekken's
I love my 2D fighting. I cannot stand 3D fighting games other than Soul
I was gonna
Calibur.
say I love Soul
God,
Calibur.
Soul Calibur's
That
fun.
also
And Soul Calibur again is just dumb. Like
Yeah.
you can make it as dumb as you want too, and I'm here.
and it
for
also
It's a 2D fighter with it's 2.5 truly.
yeah, it's fair.
Yeah, I mean it's like definitely a 3D arena, but I think gameplay wise you're right. It's definitely like 2.5.
And it has
Because
a
like
block
right, you're
button,
still in
which is
moving.
most important.
Also that, but in how you move in the 3-dimensional space, you still are always facing each other and are like interacting on
yeah.
a straight line. So like
Yeah,
even though you
for
make
sure.
use of the 3-dimensional space, the attacks are 3D. You can like dodge
Yeah.
3-dimensionally. Like
It doesn't like have
the interactions are
yeah.
still very much trying to like replicate the
I-
2D fighter.
I like Soul Calibur.
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat's probably my top, followed by like Injustice, which again is just Mortal Kombat, and like Soul Calibur. And then like I don't think there's any modern like Western releases, but like Bloody Roar, I played a ton as a kid. Bloody Roar is fantastic. It probably does not hold up at all, but I loved it as a kid.
I hadn't even heard
Most
of that
fighting
one.
games, it's really hit or miss. I've not heard of that one. either.
Yeah, I think it's like super Japanese, and like there was like a couple Western
Oh.
releases, and somehow me and my brothers got our hands on one for the PS2.
Oh,
and
cool.
It's like human people fighting, and then they can change into a designated animal form. And so like one character turns into like a cheetah, and one character turns into like a bat. And it's wild. Like it's absolutely insane. I loved it as a kid.
Maggie's like,
Imagine that. I feel like I've seen that.
You probably have.
Oh,
But,
no,
like,
I haven't. Actually,
Oh, okay.
absolutely not. I've
Yeah.
not seen this game. This does look
I don't-
really
there's,
cool, though.
There's
Uh.
no Western releases, I think, since that one that we played as a kid.
Man. I missed the old polygons.
You just look up some of the character art of just like there's like a wolf guy,
Yeah.
there's a lion guy,
There's a bunny.
there's somebody who just turns into a chimera, and they're like you have to unlock them, and they're crazy. Yeah, there's a bunny character, there's a vampire character who's like a bat.
wolf. Lizard-looking guy.
Yeah, lizard. Yeah,
I don't know why,
Love
but
that
for
game.
some reason this makes me want a Zoids fighter, just because I love Zoids.
Oh, Zoids was my favorite as a
Zoids
so
was that
good.
one show that I thought nobody
I had
watched
so
and
many
everybody's
Zoids
watched it
toys.
and
Everyone
loved
watched
them. I
it.
also
It
had
was
Zoids
so
toys.
good, and I don't understand
Zoids
how it
were
only got
so
like a
good.
single season.
Amazing.
Like, it's so good.
there's a couple
was
Zoids
just- it's-
games, but I don't think they're very
I'm
good.
98% sure the Zoids toys came before the television show.
That's how it usually goes. The
Yeah.
show is there to sell toys.
That's how Transformers was.
Power Rangers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Transformers, 100%.
Oh my god.
They're all exist solely to be advertising. That's awesome.
fair.
There was one, oh my god. Bionicle. There we go. Bionicle was the one
Oh,
that I remember got a
Bionicle's
show.
sick. Did y'all ever play the Bionicle website games?
No, I
It was
know
like
people
a point-and-click
love
adventure
the
game on their
Bionicle.
website. I played it all the time as a kid.
Oh shit!
don't know why when I
remember
actively
these
had
toys.
consoles.
Oh,
Yeah,
apparently
Bionicles
there's
were super popular.
Bionicle's so good.
Oh my god, there's a
Had so much lore too.
there's a
There was
show
so much
from
Bionicle lore.
2016. It's on Netflix. I gotta go watch this.
Yeah, there was one that came out not
I'd
too
be
long
shocked
ago.
But
if
not really.
Zoids isn't still going. I'd have to imagine
I don't think Zoids is.
No, dude, I'm pretty sure that's really, really dead.
Look it up,
It's
Heck.
super dead. Like,
it's like dead.
yeah, like
I had so many Zoids toys as a kid, though. I got those for like every birthday and Christmas, and I played with them all the time. I still think about Zoids like weekly.
So
I love
good.
Zoids.
yeah, like the show only got one season, and I'm assuming that therefore they
It
don't.
feels
make
like it was
toys
so much
anymore.
more than one season when I was a kid.
I mean, it's 26 episodes, right? Like, you know,
it's still only like
Yeah,
a season.
It had a show airing as
I don't
recently as
know.
2018. I knew it. Like it's just
Oh,
one of those,
really?
yeah, because it's around merchandise, right? And so it's really
Does it
easy,
just have
especially
a different name,
something
like a
that,
different
like-
subtitle.
Zoids Wild is the name. I'm sure it's really unpopular. Oh,
No,
you
it
know what? You're
also
right
only
because the
has
last
one
one was
season, though.
2005.
Yeah, no, like, this is dead.
Again, it's all just to like sell the models, right? Like the show side of it is dead, but the show was never designed to succeed.
Only
It
go
was
to
just like a
Amazon.
No.
lucky accident that a couple of these succeeded.
Yeah, but it's so
Yeah,
good.
Chaotic Century and New Century were the first two, and those 1999 and 2001.
Those games, those shows were sick.
They were super good. They were way better than they should have been. But yeah, I was surprised there weren't more like Zoids games and stuff like that. Stuff that came out.
Like I
of
said,
it.
there's been at least one or two, and like I
Yeah.
don't think they.
No.
It's kind of like the just like off topic, but similar, like the Games Workshop licenses for like Warhammer and Warhammer 40K. The ratio of quality content to overall content is so low. Like Games Workshop does not care about their license at all, and I bet Zoids was like somebody like the people who made the BattleTech game, Harebrained Schemes. I bet could make a sick Zoids game, and then you get the ones that are real. And
There was
terrible.
a Switch game. There's a
Gundam is the worst
Zoids
about
game
that.
for the Switch from
Oh, God,
2020,
Gundam
I
is so
think.
cool.
It could. Supposedly,
I think
Evolution is good.
the hero shooter isn't that the hero shooter?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
The hero shooter is supposed to be pretty
Came out
good.
right before
which I
Overwatch
don't-
2 came
I'm
out.
not
and
a-
people
Wait,
really
there's
yeah,
hyped
I'm
on
not
it.
a big hero shooter.
does it have a loot or is it just the hero shooter? Because if there's a looty
Hero shooter.
shooty, then I'm all in. Like,
No,
That's
it's a
not
hero
looter
shooter.
I was always
They should make a looter shooter mech game. That'd be sick.
That'd be so
Rogue
Bring
good.
back Chromehammer.
I had this thought like the other day.
Dude,
I was
they
like,
could
why
do
is there
that
not
version.
a mech roguelike out there that's really popular? Like Zoids or something like that is like a
Um,
perfect example of something.
The closest, which is not exactly what you mean, but the closest would be Into the Breach, made by the
Yeah.
FTL, which Into the Breach is incredible and just got a anniversary update, which added a ton of stuff like about like a month or two ago, and it's really good.
But it's a strategy
highly
game, right?
recommend that game. It is, and it's
Yeah.
kind of like roguelike because like every run you do, it's like FTL where like if you die, like you start over from the beginning, and like the mechs you bring can be continuous, but like the items you pick up during like the campaign are different,
Yeah.
and like the pilots you get will be different. What you're thinking, I'm sure, is more like putting on new like arm mounts and
Yeah,
stuff,
exactly.
which would be like
Like
super
mech
cool.
combat, and
But,
do it
yeah,
one of
yeah,
the
like Battletech
two
or
ways,
whatever,
whether you
but-
do it in the space robot
I-
warrior way or the actual
I
mech
mean,
combat way.
Technically, the BattleTech strategy game made by Harebrained Schemes, I'm pretty sure there is a mode on that is vaguely a roguelike.
Mhm. Yeah, but
It's
it's
like a
strategy too,
long
right?
form. Yeah, it's a turn-based strategy, kind of like XCOM, but with like more like granularity to it because it's BattleTech. But there's like the campaign, which is a story, and then there's a career mode where you're literally just trying to get like the highest score you can, but like long form. And obviously, like the mechs you fight and like pick up and like are able to salvage like determines how far you could get. I've played that. Like that game is. I have like 70 hours in the game. The game is really good. Yeah. That's probably between that and Into the Breach, probably the closest we would get. Which you're right, it should exist.
I'm just surprised it doesn't. It's not like
Maybe the new Armored Core will get some of that. Maybe we'll get some of that
Hopefully.
or some of the Soul stuff bleed over.
Hopefully
I don't
it'll
want it
just
to be a Armored Core Souls
drive interest in mech combat because it's really what I think why it doesn't exist is like I love it and like
Yeah,
it seems
same.
like so many people don't.
I just love my grounded Western mechs like Titanfall or BattleTech or whatever.
Where they actually have some weight to 'em.
Yeah,
Mechs.
Titanfall,
Yeah.
looty shooty.
I
Let's
like
go.
both.
Let's
I
bring it
admittedly
on.
also like the skating ones. There was a really good free one on Epic Game Store. As someone who actually plays the freebies that come out
Oh,
on Epic.
actually,
every once in a
speaking
Hawken?
of freebies on there,
Hawken was decent.
James,
while. Damon X Mach.
I feel like
Oh, that one's good. Yeah, that one.
James, I feel
I'll get
like
on
you
Switch.
might recognize this or might have played this. Have you seen the Epic Game Store had like an FPS RTS hybrid game on there that actually looked like pretty interesting? And I'm like, damn, I want to play
Remember
this.
the
How is
name?
it both of those?
So
you
what they
go in
usually
or out,
do,
right? Like you either
is-
control or then you go
yeah,
into
they
the.
usually let you swap, and so like you'll be in the RTS to like put down buildings and stuff, or like create units, and then you'll take control. There was a Command and Conquer first-person shooter that did that in its multiplayer mode, and that game was super cool. Obviously, didn't go anywhere because Command and Conquer doesn't exist anymore, but
Command and
know.
Conquer doesn't exist
it
anymore.
was called Eximus. Oh no, Eximius.
Is it like officially dead or it's just been
EXIMIUS.
away for a while?
I mean, it's in the backlog of EA's massive catalog of stuff that they've acquired over the years.
Okay.
So there was Command & Conquer 3, which was the last like super good one. There was Red Alert 3, which was good. And then there was a planned first-person shooter made around the time like of the modern era with like Halo and everything. So it was going to be like a sci-fi first-person shooter with like some squad commands. So it was going to be super cool. And it was called Tiberium. And there was even a Game Informer cover story of it. Like it was, that up and coming for whatever that means. But it got canceled, and I'm still sad about it because it looked like it was going to be so good. And then they put out Command & Conquer 4, which was right around the time that RTS was transitioning into its global competitive scene, where like StarCraft 2 is coming out and like MOBAs like for real were starting to come out.
Mhm.
And EA tried to make CNC4 a MOBA like that kind of competitive game, and it's fucking terrible. It's
Yeah,
god
that doesn't
awful,
sound
and it makes me so
particularly good.
sad that we're probably never going to get another Command and Conquer game because that was like I adore the Command and Conquer, all of them. Like they're all so like we got the
It's also in EA's
The
hands and it's
remake
an
or-
RTS, which is unfortunate.
yeah. So we got the remake of Red Alert one with the Command and Conquer one, that remake that came out, and it's really good. But obviously, like those games are from like the mid '90s, so like even as a remake, they're still super dated. So I'd love to get something like
I
new.
actually
the
think
problem is just
I
like
think-
RTSs don't make a ton of money except for the ones that build off of nostalgia that started in the early 90s.
Yeah, either that or like a major brand like Halo Wars. I'm sure has made a ton of money, but that's because it's a well-made Halo.
Or the
Obviously
Dune
made by
game.
like Grab.
I'm sure the Dune game, exact same story there.
Dune game is sick. You need to play it. It's super good. It probably hasn't made a ton of money, but it's really good.
So you need to pick one first. I still have it in the back of my mind to play one of the Warhammer
You gotta
games.
play Northgard or the Dune game. Either way, they're both by the same company. You gotta play them.
I want to play one of the Warhammer games first because that was your.
You do gotta play that.
Yeah, it was your favorite. I like. I'm
The
gonna play
first
one
Dawn
of
of
them.
War. The first Dawn of War still holds up. It's beautiful, like despite being like dated in its graphics. Like it's so detailed despite being old, and like oh my god, it's so good. And the mods for it just make it like true to the Warhammer scale. Like it's fantastic.
it's hilarious.
Really
And
why-
James, I'm sure it makes you so sad. I'm pretty sure the most recent Command and Conquer game is one for the phone.
Of course.
Is it called like Rivals or something?
I think so.
Yeah. I've played it. It's not great.
I know.
It is a cut and paste copy of all the other like base building mobile games,
Yep.
just with a Command and Conquer skin, and it just makes me
Yes,
sad.
sir.
And it probably made a decent amount of money before they stopped.
Yes,
probably made
sir.
an okay amount of money. Yeah.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it's just
well,
like-
actually, one other funny mobile game note. I just think I still can't believe that this is a thing. You were talking about Into the Breach, right? And so I go to look it up, and
Yeah.
you know what's fucking hilarious? Pack, if you want to play Into the Breach, just open the Netflix app on your phone, man. There you go.
Oh, I saw that a while ago.
Yeah, they got a deal with
Uh,
Netflix,
It's
which
coming out
like
for free in a
like
bunch
it's
of
kind
different
of silly,
platforms.
but it's cool for
It
them.
is,
Like,
yeah.
they're a really small studio,
And like that's
you know, they got some
good
good stuff.
publicity.
People are still throwing money at
probably,
them.
hopefully, maybe.
It's a really good game.
No,
Oh my God.
It's more like cashing in on the good publicity they've gotten because they were like very, very critically acclaimed and widely touted by a bunch of
Yeah.
people. But
FTL
still
was
very, very
FTL was
accessible.
really good. Yeah, like especially for what it
Yeah.
is, obviously.
Yeah,
It's kind of like it's in that
They're
same
both-
category as
both
like
essentially
Stardew, where it's a
incredible.
very cheap game that is very accessible to pretty much anybody and can be played on any platform very easily because the controls
Yeah.
are simple. And so
Mhm.
it's just been shopped around to literally every platform and every like publisher who's willing to give them money to put it out.
yeah.
They are doing like 'cause Into the Breach has been free on Epic Game Store. It was free somewhere else too at one point. It's been on Game Pass. Now it's on Netflix. Like just anybody who can
Such a
put
good
it out
game.
there. And yeah, it's a great thing that it's been put out there because it's incredibly worth it. I have not beaten it because I'm terrible.
I haven't beaten that or FTL. I've gotten very close on FTL a couple
FTL I
times,
haven't
and
even
I've definitely
tried. I
not
heard
beaten.
FTL is really
I
hard.
haven't played FTL.
It's just
since
that
like high
final.
school.
It's that final ship you have to fight, man.
Hmm?
It's tough.
The last time I played
What'd you say,
FTL was, I think the last time, I think the last time I played FTL was like in high school. Like it's been a quick
Probably.
fucking minute.
It's been a
right?
long
Like it's an
time,
old
yeah.
game at this point, right? Like for sure.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of those stories about. You guys been seeing the stuff on Dwarf Fortress?
Yeah.
Where I saw a
I
couple of
haven't- I
people
need
who
to
were
get
like,
it.
Jesus Christ, I played this game in 2008 and it's coming out now.
Well, and not just that it's coming out now. They specifically, the Steam release is the one that changes the graphics from. You all probably know how to say it, but is it ASCII?
ASCII.
ASCII, yeah. It's not ASCII like visuals anymore. It's actually a game that you can play.
Yeah, has like a bunch of quality of life
'cause
features to make it accessible.
I played it back in the day, like a long time ago when I first heard about it with the original graphics, and I immediately was like, I cannot do this.
Mhm.
This is nonsense.
No shit on the ASCII art. Or was it ASCII art or was it a text adventure? Or was it
ASCII.
No, it's ASCII.
okay?
It's ASCII.
Very
That's
specifically.
baller.
It's
Fucking
wild how much
baller.
complexity that
Yeah.
game has while looking like the alphabet.
It's because they wouldn't. It was a combination of many, many things. It was obviously a passion project that just kind of evolved over time, which is really cool.
I'm glad they got their Steam release. Like I have it on my wish list. I haven't bought it yet, but I definitely will. Like just because I've always wanted to play it for real, and I'm happy for them. So
I think I'll end up playing because I've watched some of the game now, and it's just clearly a different flavor of RimWorld, and so I'm just going to go back and play
yeah,
that. But
I love RimWorld.
I think it's like a very. I'm glad it's out there and it's very, very popular. I'm glad that.
Yeah,
kind
I
of
mean,
game
we
is on
wouldn't
the
have
rise.
RimWorld without Dwarf Fortress. So,
That's incredibly true.
The pedigree is very much there, and I mean, RimWorld's fantastic. Which, if anybody likes RimWorld and has not picked up the expansions, you definitely should. They're all great.
That's what Sam's
Actually
playing
bought
right
them
now,
for
right?
Our good
Is-
friend.
Play them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bought him the expansion.
Super good.
So
I-
James, what have you been playing, James?
I think I mentioned it in our group like text thing, I think, but when we were talking about what Greg was buying, I got a $50 gift card for my Xbox for Christmas from my girlfriend's parents. And then I also randomly had $100 already in my Xbox wallet, which I think was also from my girlfriend from forever ago, and I just forgot about it. So I got Gotham Knights, which was $40 some for like the deluxe edition. And like that's definitely a game that I was like curious about because like I love Batman and like it seemed playable, like, you know, passable. Definitely a buy on sale game. And I did not have high hopes for it, but I was like $40 out of $150 that I didn't have to pay for. Not a big deal, like whatever. And I'm actually really, really enjoying it. Good. Like it's a solid 7, I would say.
Huh.
But like it has a good amount of like detail in it that I did not expect from it. So like it's, you know, ideally a 4-player co-op game. I think, or maybe it's 2-player, but you can choose from 4 characters. I can't remember exactly which it is. I think it's 2 players in like the story.
4, but I can't remember either.
Well, I think it's 2 in the story, and then they have a 4-player like horde mode essentially kind of thing. But there's 4 characters you can pick from, right? It's Batgirl, and then 3 of the Robins that have existed, basically. Nightwing, one of the current Robins, and then Jason Todd, who's Red Hood. But point being is you can basically, you're like at a story location, like your base, and then you go out into Gotham as like the overworld. And when you're in Gotham, it's open world, and you do that at night. And then when you're done with all the stuff on that instance of the Gotham map, you go back to the base, and it progresses the story to the next day, basically. But like while you're at night, it's, you know, the time doesn't actually pass. It'll be night as long as you want it to be.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah.
And the whole point is that you're going around like fighting crime, right? So there's like procedural generated crimes that happen that are constant. And then there's like they're called premeditated crimes that are like a little more story focused. And then like occasionally you'll run into like actual characters and they'll have different missions for you and, you know, stuff like that. But what's cool is that when you go back to the base, you can swap between the 4 characters. And they all have individual skill trees, which is like kind of annoying because like if you unlock something for one character, you have to unlock it for the other one also.
Yeah.
But their levels are all consistent. So if like you get to level 15 with Nightwing, when you swap to Batgirl, she'll be level 15, and so she'll have all those skill points. You just have to go in and like assign them.
Yeah, that's super fair.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I don't know if that was updated with patches because I feel like in the review copies, people were complaining about it that you had to unlock it for everybody. Maybe people just didn't play enough to get like to realize that it was consistent. I don't know. I feel like there was a lot of complaints about the game that I'm not seeing right now. And then like it is a like looting game, so like your costume has individual pieces, and not like Injustice where like actual pieces. It's just the suit, and then their melee weapon, and then their ranged weapon. That's like the only gear that there is. And then there's like mods that you can put into mod slots. And you would think that would be annoying too, because you'd have to craft like new ones for each character. And also when you're playing as like Nightwing, you don't get like Batgirl gear also. It's like if you play as Nightwing, you're going to get more Nightwing gear, obviously. But then when you switch back over to like Batgirl, the game will usually give her a at level for whatever her new level is piece of gear. So like it's literally not annoying at all. Like it's a little bit annoying to like fiddle in the menu and go in and like swap everything, but it doesn't take any time. The game keeps it pretty consistent. But what I was going to say that I really like personally as someone who's like super into detail in games is, you know, if you go do a mission and you have to go talk to Harley Quinn, the game will know which character you're playing and it'll have a cutscene for your character with Harley Quinn. Like it's not just a generic, oh, you're here to stop me. She'll have a dialogue with, you know, Jason Todd or a dialogue. I went and did a bunch of the Harley Quinn stuff playing as Batgirl. So I was like, oh, the girl on girl like conversation is going to be different and probably more unique than if like Robin went and talked to her. And like it was like it's like small details, but as someone who loves details in games, and obviously like a lot of games exist where they don't put in the work into those details. Like they didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
But like they did. And then like when you get back to the Belfry, which is like your base hub area, like the game knows you, it seems like it recognizes which character you took out for the previous night. And like the other characters will be like, hey, what did you see out there, Barbara? Like, what did you see? And then if you played as Batgirl, she'll be the one, you know, obviously to tell the rest of the team. I don't know. It's a little boring in the sense that the combat, while obviously being based on the Arkham game combat, is not that same level of depth. It's a little simpler. It's more just like button, like, you know, X and Y. And
is it smooth at least? Right? Like
it's smoother than the reviews made it seem like. Like I know, I don't know if how much of the Arkham games you guys played, but like as Batman, when you would punch people and like you would flick the stick, kind of like the Shadow of War games too. like the character would pretty easily glide over to another enemy and hit them, especially if your combo meter was high. It was more fluid, right? That was the whole point of those games, and like that was like their unique combat system. It's not as fluid as that, but it's more fluid than I was expecting based on the reviews. Especially as I've played more. I don't know if like
I think
as you do more of the skill tree, it like is making it more fluid. And it honestly doesn't feel bad. Like I'm really enjoying it. So.
That's really good to hear.
I think newer games that have like tried to strike
this.
that middle ground, people get annoyed because the old games that started the Arkham style were, when you say fluid, another word to say it is generous. Because you could flick the stick in the left direction, they could be 15 feet away from you, and you still get the hit. And now they're like, hey, you don't deserve that. You just flick the stick and pressed a button. You're gonna whip that.
I always liked it because it definitely made you feel like Batman, right? Like when you can, you feel like Batman would be that, like him especially. Like, you know, he's so well trained and has so much experience. And by the Arkham games, like it's not like a new Batman. Like he's been Batman for a while. Which, by the way, the Arkham game version of Batman is my favorite interpretation. Like my favorite version of him between the detective element and the like crime fighting element. But yeah, this game like. It's pretty fluid. Like my biggest complaint so far is it's a little tedious, which it's between the story stuff when you're just running around like trying to like fight the like criminals and like do the combat. Like you just put a podcast on or something, and like the game is fun enough that it's not a big deal.
Maybe put jetpack swords on. When you get into a story segment,
when you get into like a story segment with like one of the major characters, you just pause it and you listen to what's going on because it's like as well written as any other comic book thing. Like it's fine. My other big thing is like some of the voices just feel a little off just because like I'm so used to like the Arkham games, like voices for, you know, the actors they had for those. Mm-hmm. But like so far it's very serviceable. Like it's a fun game. I wish I had somebody to play it with, like for real. Like I keep trying to bring it up to Jacob and, you know, subtly hint that he should get it, but you know. But yeah, that game's good.
Games like that. Unfortunately, like games like that take a big gamble where it's like, hey, you and multiple friends need to get this $30 to $60 game.
And I think what's cool too is, you know, like a lot of co-op games have a tether system where like you have to stay near your co-op partner, which like in this day and age, 100% should not exist. Like we are so far beyond that. I don't think Gotham Knights has a tether system. So like I would like to actually play it with somebody so we could be together, but also like if I want to go solve crime on this side of the city, I could go do that and like do whatever. And then on the other hand, the other game that I got, so I highly recommend Gotham Knights for like a on sale, you know, just fun. So if you like superhero games, definitely get it. Other game I got was Far Cry 6, just because like I've enjoyed most of the Far Cry games, and it was on sale. And again, I just had free money sitting around. It's fine. It's definitely Far Cry. It feels way less polished than the last couple I've played, which is surprising. But
what was the last one you played?
5. I played a good amount of 5.
Did you beat 5?
No, because it got tedious.
I agree with that.
5 is the one where you could be flying a plane and one of the like kidnapped story moments would happen and you would get blowgunned, like darted in the neck while you were flying, which is really funny, but it's also so stupid.
Oh my god, dude! The 6, Far Cry games are it's funny because they pioneered doing that. Where like, hey, fill a bar in the open world and then the story takes over. But they every other game since them does the story taking over part way better.
Way better. Yeah, absolutely.
Far Cry is just like seizes the controls from you and is like, it's time for the story.
Yeah, it's fine. Like it's a first person shooter with, they got rid of the skill tree system, so there's no skill trees anymore. It's all just based on the gear you have, which like is a change. It's not a unique change, but it's a change from how Far Cry's been the last like 4 of them. But it's fine. I don't know. I just wanted a first person shooter to play that was not like a Call of Duty specifically. So, you know, it does that job well enough. I've definitely played more Gotham Knights, which I was surprised by that I'd play more of that than the Far Cry. But it's
really
fine.
Glad to hear
that game does have a tether for its co-op, which is again ridiculous to me that does and Gotham Knights doesn't. So
I'm really glad to hear though that Gotham Knights is not as terrible as some of the reviews made it out to be, because like that style of gameplay, like the Arkham, you mentioned Shadow of War and Mordor, and arguably even like the Assassin's Creed, Spider-Man and like Assassin's Creed somewhat, like that's some of my favorite like gameplay.
They're just really good action
games.
It's
just fun, right? Like I don't care that I didn't time the parry perfectly, and like I don't care that I needed to like watch
Yeah.
this telegraph move from the boss. No. I wanted to literally light up a fucking symbol above the dude's head that tells me, oh, I should go press Y instead of X now. Like it's literally X X X X X, symbol lights up, go press Y and parry, and I fucking love it. It's just fun.
I just
it's
think
just
they're
fun.
such good power fantasy games.
Yes, that's
the
exactly
thing. As
what it
someone
is.
like
Yeah.
personally who loves games for the power fantasy and like being able to be immersed in a world, like they do such a good job. And one nice thing is like speaking of like specifically Arkham games is, you know, if you didn't want to deal with having the billboard light up over the enemy's head that says to parry or counter now, you can turn that stuff off.
That's true.
And, like,
yeah,
I've played the
because
Arkham
they do
games
telegraph it otherwise.
without having the parry. Yeah, I was gonna say I've played the Arkham games without having the parries up, and it's totally doable. And it's fun too. It makes it a little harder, but it's like just as, you know, enjoyable to play.
Hey, I
don't know if you can do that in Gotham Knights, but
I love when games give you difficulty tweaks that are not health and damage, right?
yeah, bullet sponge, absolutely,
Like
100%.
like something like that. Like disabling that is fantastic. Like another game that
That's
I
more
think
of a UI aesthetic thing because they've like
It
the
is,
flashing button is
but
probably replaced by
think
a real
Arkham
in-game
ties it
proc.
into the difficulty also. I think Arkham specifically does tie it into the difficulty as well.
So I doubt
Like,
they
it's
changed
both
the
for Arkham
animation for it,
specifically.
right? Like I think you just have to recognize the animation.
No, the
Yeah.
animation's it's exactly the same animation, which is like also
Yeah.
if you like what I did is I played it normally once and then did a replay without the parry symbols. So
I was gonna say
Um,
one game that does it so well, which not at launch, but they do now, is State of Decay actually, right? Like you get like 5
Yeah.
different difficulty things and you can change the difficulty of those 5 things like individually. And I just love
Yeah.
it. Like I love that they give you that flexibility in terms of doing that. Like that's
Absolutely.
really great.
I think we're getting more of that, not just for like the difficulty, but that wrapped into accessibility too. Like Far Cry 6, despite being a pretty okay, mediocre, whatever game, especially compared to like, you know, what I remember of Far Cry with 3 and 2 especially. But that game has so many accessibility and difficulty options for like the full spectrum. Maybe not as
Oh,
much as like
yeah.
a lot of the Sony games, but it's really nice that it's there. And it's like, it's not just accessibility and it's not just difficulty. Like they are tied together and you can adjust it to your heart's content. Like one thing I did was like, there's a lot of item pickups in Far Cry 6. You can turn on like instantly from like the main menu, like immediately turn on the option for them to be outlined. Because I was like, I don't want to go scavenge around and not be able to find these pickups, especially when crafting is such a big thing.
Mhm.
It's like I kept the difficulty, you know, normal, but then like what would have been a lower difficulty option was turning on like the pickup icons.
Yeah.
And like there was obviously a ton of different like presets you could do. There was
Mhm.
there was specifically a sensory preset, a motor preset, a like mental preset, an audio preset for the full range of, you know, whatever disabilities or issues you might have, or just preferences. You know, it doesn't have to be anything tied to a disability. Just, I don't know. Ubisoft, I know, gets a lot of shit. Obviously, one, for their like workplace issues they've had for the last like 2 years, but also 2, for like the quality overall of their games in terms of like, you know, they're all pretty samey. I mean, this game, literally, I can tell there's stuff from Ghost Recon pulled into Far Cry 6. Like, I can literally tell. But they are generally all serviceable games with well-made UIs.
It's
and,
a
like,
game.
You know,
Yeah.
difficulty and like accessibility.
You know what you're
settings.
gonna
like,
get.
They're fine. You know what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
Exactly. Literally, you know what you're gonna get, and like that's fine. You know, it's the McDonald's of games.
I love McDonald's, so you know, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that probably wraps it up for us today, unless anyone else has got. Oh, I just thought of a random thing, just random to another good thing that does like variable difficulty is a lot of racing games. So I don't know about a lot, at least Forza, right? Like Forza has like, because literally each thing, it's like, do you want ABS? Do you want the line? Okay, well, do you want
Yeah,
do you want
racing
the
games, I think
line
they've always
all the
done that, for
time,
sure.
or do you want it to only show up when you need to brake? And like, you know, like, oh, what
Mhm.
level of like you know, assisted steering do you want it, right? And so like it gives you all of these like different things, and obviously they have presets, right? They have presets for these, or you can tweak each setting
Mhm.
individually, and then it's nice because like the amount of bonus experience you get based on your difficulty is based on like the sum of all of those different settings. So you can play exactly as you want,
Mhm.
right? Like you can play with ABS off and a complete line that tells you exactly when to break, or you could just literally be like full quote unquote sim mode and just like Omega hard difficulty. And then they on top of that have like enemy AI racer difficulty, right? But it's kind of nice that you get that variability and that flexibility to play the way you want to play, and just it just makes it more fun. And like you were talking about with crafting, like games where it's like I want abundant crafting resources, right? Like I don't want to have to worry about like finding these things.
I'm glad we're getting more of that.
Yeah, and just like being able to say, which I think is probably some of like the State of Decay stuff, right? Is like pretty sure one of the sliders is like how abundant are resources in the world, right?
Yeah, they always have a lot of games, or not a lot. Some games are starting to get like an economy difficulty settings that'll determine like how rare resources are, and like maybe I don't want the combat to be hard, but I'm okay, you know, having fewer crafting resources to like offset that, or you know, whatever. It's just like we were saying, it's just for accessibility's sake and for like preference sake. It's nice that companies are doing that more now. So for everybody, not just us.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. All right. Well, on that note, I'm going to go raid some Vault of Incarnates in WoW. Peace.
See ya.
Peace.